planted disinformation. This is what happens to a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand how to differentiate between planted disinformation and actual factual information, and what aids to factual information are actual events. So it's a if then, or a cause that we see, if they did this, it's because of this, or they wouldn't have did this if they wasn't trying to do that. So when you look at, things that take place in history, this whole shooting off of missiles into the whole ionosphere, it makes sense. So now we're talking about the 1950s. They done this whole nuclear testing, shooting off these nuclear missiles. What else happened in the 1950s? Remember, you had multiple UFO sightings in the 1950s. The biggest UFO sighting that almost none of you, some of you have seen the footage, but it's not official footage, but mostly everybody writes off, but it's so well documented, happened in 1952. In 1952, you had UFOs fly over Washington, D.C., past the Capitol building. So many people seen it. So many people documented. It was all in the papers. It was all over TV. It was a major event that happened more than once. It happened so many times that people went crazy. People started calling the cops, and it was a big thing. And it was so big that the Pentagon had to give a whole press conference on this whole thing. It ended up becoming one of the most watched, most widely covered press conferences in American history. How many people understood this? How many people know about this? And this is something that they cover up, but it was one of the most watched, most covered events in American history. And a lot of people don't even know about it. It's well documented. Now, the video you see of the flying saucers over, or the orbs, the energetic orbs, over Washington, D.C., over the Capitol building. It's not official video, but this is what people say it looked like. And this is the interview that he gave. Now, understand what he's saying here. Understand what's taking place, because, if understand what's taking place, you got to get this. He is giving an interview, an official interview, trying to explain why so many people in Washington, D.C. have seen on multiple occasions UFOs fly behind the Capitol building and fly over Washington, D.C. It's something that they could not hide. Technology at that time was not possible for you to see what they saw in 1952. So take a listen to his excuse, his reasoning behind what happened. This is an official, real interview about UFOs. I mean, take a look. So now understand, this is how it's supposed to work when you have free press, that the people, when they want answers, they demand it from their government and they get actions. This happened in the 50s. This is a real event that happened, a real press conference about UFOs, and him trying to basically understand, one, we're talking about UFOs, and that this interview is probably going to be seen in the future. A lot of people are going to be analyzing what happened. So understand and realize how he tries very hard not to say anything about, UFOs, that these events or anomalies or what have you is something that they're looking into. He doesn't really want to say UFOs, but you can't tell the people who've seen it on multiple occasions that this is anything other than extraterrestrial, because they've seen it on multiple occasions. Now, you also have, right after this, the CIA basically come up with a program that basically said that, any kind of sensitive information involving UFOs cannot be put out to the public. And they basically came up with some kind of act or law, I forget what it's called, to basically cover up everything. Whenever it's going to be any kind of event, we can't have press there. We can't have free press. And we know, right after the 1950s is when they started buying up all of the news corporations and all the magazines. They did everything to control the media and the press, after this, because, stuff was happening. They didn't want it getting out to the public. So they did their best to control it. And we know they did very well. Now, eventually, according to many military sources, people came out and spoke about what had happened. And eventually that the UFOs made contact with the government in Washington, D.C. And they make contact with them for a reason. Now, this is that reason. Now, understand the fact that they would say that they need the ionosphere, the negative ions, it tells me that these light beings go from a physical body to a light body, because a light body is infinite energy. Remember, these negative ions is basically energy. So if you're already infinite energy, you don't really need these negative ions. The only way you would need these negative ions is if you're going to go back into a physical body and you want to have these negative ions to basically keep the body cleansed and healed of any kind of radiation that you may have passed through. Now, understand, the only thing that can survive those Van Allen radiation belts is a light body. It's some kind of light body. So this is why whenever we see these UFOs, they appear as these light orbs, these light bodies, because that's the only way they could get through the radiation belts. Now, he said that they were trying to detonate a nuke on the moon, but these UFOs kept destroying it before they can do that. Now, why would they want to detonate a nuke on the moon? Think about that. The only way that makes sense is if they wanted to see if they can harm the moon. Now, why would they want to harm the moon? Why would they want to, damage it in any way? Now, as I pointed this out in part 1, Saturn, Satan, God, Nature, Reality, I said towards the end, I talked about how Saturn, the planet Saturn, is basically using our moon. When you look up the moon, it says the Earth's natural satellite. Saturn is using our moon to basically broadcast time. Remember, I talked about this. You have to understand something. And, this is important. There are two basic parts to time. Really, it's 2 parts to time. The first part is time as we measure it in relation to the sun and the moon. So I'm talking about, from sunrise to sunset. We say it's noon because the sun sets in the west or in the east, or the sun is setting here. We say that it's dawn because the sun is rising. And this is how we tell time as it relates to the sun and the moon. That's the natural way we're supposed to be looking at it if we want to call time natural. Now, the second way we measure time, that we look at time, is the effect that it has on our bodies and on the physical world. So now understand this. This is important. Time as we know it is not time. Time as we know it is not what we think it is. So, time is not years. Time is not years. It's not days or what have you. It's not minutes and seconds. Time is the effect that years, minutes, seconds, days has on our body and the physical world. That is time. That is what time really is. So now understand this. What is affecting our body? Is it time, or is it the radiation? Is it the microbes and the viruses that's causing the breakdown of our cells? Remember, as I said, without the radiation, without our body cells fighting off, bacteria and viruses and things like that, our cells will have the time to regenerate, basically giving us eternal life when you really put it into context. So if you destroy the moon, if the moon is broadcasting the Van Allen radiation belts, which is what they believe is causing the radiation belts, if you destroy the moon, as I talked about in so many movies that they do it, if you destroy it, you destroy the Van Allen radiation belts, and you effectively get rid of the radiation that's basically causing our bodies to diminish. You effectively destroy time. So if there is no Van Allen radiation belts, if the ionosphere is allowed to come down to the level that it probably was at one point, because what's happening is, because of the Van Allen radiation belts, is drawing the ionosphere to about 50 miles above Earth. And you have an ionosphere that's so high that we can't exist in. All implications point to the fact that if you get rid of the ionosphere, if you get rid of the Van Allen radiation belts, it will bring the ionosphere to a level that it once was at one point. So now I explained to you the purpose of the pyramids and what they were used for, to generate this ionosphere, because the real ionosphere, the natural one that was full of negative ions, is basically being attracted away from the planet due to the Van Allen radiation belts, which is why they built the pyramids, to try to make another one that could sustain them. So remember, the pyramids are built over water. Remember, you get negative ions from the movement of water crashing, water just moving, period. This stuff that happens on a very microscopic level for us to get these negative ions. So understand this. This planet is 70% water for a reason. Look at the diagram again of the pyramid. What does it start with? The sun. It starts with the sun. The whole process begins because of the sun. It's just that simple. So the sun will effectively be able to do the job that it is designed to do, which is to give us a permanent negative ionosphere over the planet, which would sustain life forever. It's just that simple. This is the job of the sun. This is why the Egyptians worshipped it. This is why they understood, they knew it already, that the sun is God. And when you look at it in that sense, but it's immortality. This is what it's all about. This is what they're not talking about and telling you. This is what it's all about. There is a natural order, a cycle that exists that has been disturbed because of this Van Allen radiation belt. Whatever is going on is unnatural, something that's not supposed to happen. And the sun was giving us this atmosphere. Everything that you look at and research, all the stories that they talk about, remember, because they say that the moon was not there. I talked about this before. It just came out of nowhere. Everything points to this. So in essence, without the moon there, you get rid of the Van Allen radiation belts. The sun does its job and provides a protective ionosphere around the planet so the planet can heal itself. Fortunately for the planet, there still exists negative ions in many different places around the earth. And people who know how to absorb that energy can take it, can use it, because we're talking about something that has to affect your energy. Trees are tapped in. Trees are conscious. They understand. So they know how to absorb this negative energy from the negative ions and use it in the correct way. So, it's so much more to this that is so deep, and I wish I could really get into every nook of it. But, for time's sake, I just want you to understand this and look into this and understand that this is what this war is about. And, it's about many other things. It's so deep. It's so much to this stuff that we're going to get into. And I'm going to try to bring this thing to some kind of conclusion in part 6. But there's going to be more videos that's going to it's not going to be a part of this series because it will help it. And it will help you connect more dots in this series. But it's not really. It goes more towards something else that, I'll explain later in other videos. But you got to understand, this is what it's about. This is why the pyramids was built. This is what the ancient Egyptians was trying to do. And, after whatever happened, they was trying to recreate the power of the pyramids. Now, the ancient Egyptians and many other ancient civilizations talk about, being able to leave the physical body and, they have a spirit body, and to be able to return back to that spirit body, to astro travel. And this is something that, the ancient Egyptians talked about. And when I get into the mental nature, we'll dig into all this stuff. And, it all fits. It all makes sense when you start to think about it, and not for them to just, astral travel or turn into a light body to get through the Van Allen radiation belts, but to probably travel, just to, travel in outer space, or to travel, wherever. And they were able to do this. This is the implications of what they were talking about. Now we know there is all kinds of cosmic radiation out there. Who knows what else is out there? the best possible way for you to travel would be as a light body. So something you need to understand, if you ever see UFOs coming in spacecrafts, they are primitive. Forget the fact that you think they would travel millions of light years or what have you. Real power is in light body. It's in energy. So any kind of spacecraft that would come here, we know is bogus, is bullshit. It's probably this government playing some kind of game, trying to take over the world using some aliens so they can, say, well, it ain't me. It's these aliens who took over. And understand if that ever happens, we can destroy that. That's primitive shit. Real power is in light bodies that they can never, obtain that power. And when you look at the whole thing, because there are so many stories about, what has happened. And when you understand that, we talk about this this underground world, inner earth, hollow earth. Now, it's a lot of people who are at this level of knowledge that I talk to who talks about, and a lot of people speak about this war. Now, remember, the Bible talks about a war in heaven. A war, having a whole rebellion, and they rebelled, Satan rebelled and he was cast out or what have you. And, remember, the Illuminati likes to do everything in reverse. So if you reverse the whole story, you will have basically a war in the heavens, not in the heavens, but inside the earth, and people not being cast down, but being cast up. So a lot of people believe there was some kind of war that happened in the earth. And it caused people to leave the inner earth and come to the surface where they probably recuperated and, tried to start civilization or what have you. And then another war happened or some kind of cataclysmic event happened that, destroyed the pyramids and, wiped these people out or what have you. We don't really know. It's so many stories that, it gets confusing. But this is the one that tends to make a little sense. It just makes sense. After this war, something happened that, the moon supposedly was put in place. We get the whole Van Allen radiation belts. Some people call it the quarantine. Some people believe that the Van Allen radiation belt is a quarantine that's placed around the earth that will be lifted soon. And well, as of 2012, it actually started to dissipate. It actually started to, go down as far as its radiation strength. The reason why we keep getting bombarded with all kinds of, chemtrails, the reason why they're putting so much stuff into our food and everything like that is supposedly because this radiation belt is weakening. And they want to make sure that our cells do not benefit from the negative ions that we could possibly be absorbing. So if they keep our body sick and constantly keep our body cells fighting viruses and radiation and all kinds of stuff that we don't want to be exposed to, then they can effectively keep us, dying. They can keep us from understanding what's going on. And this is something that you really got to look into and understand what's going on and why the chemtrails and why, all the toxins in our food and everything like that. We know they want to kill us. We know they want us out of here. They just can't do it because there are rules. As I talked about, there are rules to this. Now, I'm going to get into these whole rules and this nature of reality in part 5. There's a lot to it. We're going to also get into this whole war story a lot more too. There's a lot more to that. There's a lot more that we really got to get into. And I'm going to try to cram it into 5 and 6, which will probably be longer than the rest of the videos. I don't want it to be a 7. I want to take it too long unless I really, really have to. But try to bring it down so I can get to this final point. And beyond that, with the whole mental nature and beyond that, even it's so much information. Like I said, I'm so past the religious level of information. It's a lot more to it. And what I was just talking about as far as the negative ions and everything like that. And I mean, when you break everything down to the beginning point, we're going to enter into quantum physics, which basically the mental nature really gets into that. And we'll get to that point. We'll get to that. And it's so much to it. I thought I was going to be able to put it into this series a lot, but a little bit in part 5 and 6. And then we're going to go full out on more videos on quantum physics, because this is what it really gets down to. And if you can wrap your brain around the math and science of it and somehow relate it to your physical body and understand that. I mean, I don't know how to explain it to you now, but it's going to help you out with meditation. And, I'll explain that later. We'll get into all that whole thing. But, there are some who believe that we can survive the Van Allen radiation belts, that black people can survive it, the melanin can survive it, that it does not affect us, which is why they pollute us more than they pollute anybody else. They believe that, we must be polluted because, one, we can survive it. We're not absorbing as much cosmic radiation as the rest of the world. Black people are basically really getting ill only from viruses and from, microscopic things that if we had access to the negative ions, that we would effectively live forever. This is why, Africans, we live longer than anybody else, on the planet. And then you have Asians after that, and so on and so forth. But this is what a lot of the research points to. We're going to dig into this a little bit more. And you have to really think about it. Of course, if you test the theory of going to the Van Allen radiation belts and you went out there and that, these white people was affected severely by this radiation, you had to think about African people. And it's weird that you have the Challenger and you have the Columbia both explode. Two spacecrafts, two space shuttles that exploded carrying black people. Both of them had a black person on there. Something that we probably never thought we would ever see is a black man in space. And we know it happened. But, at some point they probably had to test to see if we would have the effects of the Van Allen radiation belts if we went out there. And that's something that I think that they did. And maybe the powers that be, or whoever these extraterrestrials are responsible for those space shuttles being destroyed. I know NASA has an official report, and, I'm not going official on that, but it's something that you have to really look at as suspect. It's weird that, damn, when we finally get to, what's his name? Forget his name. The first black man in space. We know he went out there, and we don't know how far he went. We don't know how far he went. We don't know, how far the, Columbia spacecraft was supposed to go, or how far the Challenger, was supposed to go. The Columbia is supposed to have completed its mission and burned up on reentry, and we know that the Challenger was, taken off when it exploded. But it's still suspect, the whole thing, in that it just happened to be two black people on it. I just find it weird. It was Guyon Bluford that was the first African American in space. And as I said, we don't know exactly how far out he went, or did they test the Van Allen radiation belts then when they sent him out in space. So, we don't know that. And, the thing is, as I said, these radiation belts is supposed to be diminishing. And it's one of the reasons for the chemtrails and everything else like that. And, it's a lot that we're going to have to get into later on. But, I think when you look at what happened in the 1950s and 60s with the whole testing and the supposed visitation of these aliens to the powers that be at that time, I believe that on a small level, the powers that be were being controlled by these extraterrestrials, or whoever it is in power, reptilians, whatever you want to call them. But it wasn't everybody. It wasn't widespread control like it is now. I believe at that point is when the control started to spread out, is when they started to get more deeper and deeper into government and everything like that. When we see from that point on, remember, technology, it increased. The control, the grip on the government increased. Look at everything from that point on. I'm telling you, this is how you piece things together when you start looking at a certain event that happened, and then you got to pay attention to everything that happened after that, and it starts making sense. You know, everything changed after that. Definitely got more technology. We definitely got more government control, you know, and everything changed, you know, from that point. And it's when we really can look to as them really starting to lay the foundation for their agenda, whatever their ultimate agenda of theirs is, for them laying it down. Now, again, as I said, they can only come here in light bodies, meaning they can only communicate as a light being. They can't probably affect physical reality. At least I don't think they can. Now, you also have these grays that people talk about coming here. We don't know if their body can survive the radiation, or if they are the light beings who we seen, you know, flying or coming and visiting Earth just inside, using these grays as a vehicle to affect the physical world, or to, you know, to cause physical harm. We don't know what the whole thing is about. But, you know, again, as I said, it's something going on. It's a lot to it. It's so many questions that has to be answered. And I know you guys have a lot more questions after watching this, but trust me, it's all going to come together. Everything is going to fit. It's going to work. And it's a lot more after that. And, we got to look at and think about it. You know, it may be these cities underground. We may just be caught up in some kind of intergalactic war that has been, you know, settled by some kind of peace treaty, and we just caught up in the middle. We don't know what the hell going on, and we waiting to see what happened. Now, maybe the powers that be is gearing up for a war after the radiation belts are lifted, or we don't know. It just seems like when you start digging into the information that we are caught up in something. We are caught in some kind of war that, you know, we can't really get a straight answer to. It just fits in that effect somehow. So either you have our government is basically, the powers that be is at war with some kind of, race that's in the planet inside the hollow earth, or they have some kind of war going on with some kind of beings that's outside of Earth, or the beings inside, of the planet and outside of the planet were warring and probably manipulating the powers that be to take sides. Something to that effect. This is what all the evidence is showing us. We are caught in the middle of some shit. That's all I got to say. What that exactly is, we're going to get into, because there's a lot more that kind of, you know, answers a lot of questions that I don't have time to get into in this video. But, you know, this video is, it deviated from the last ones because, you know, it's going to come back and make sense in part 5. But this is the information that you had to get, you had to know and understand, because it fits with everything. You have to understand the purpose of those pyramids and why they were everywhere, and understand it's something that always boggled my mind about the energy. It's like, if we are infinite energy, which I know we are, there's no way we should age. It just shouldn't happen. And then when you read stories about people saying that, yeah, there was no aging. When you start reading it, when people talk about Lemuria, how people they live forever, there was immortals. Same thing with Atlantis. So what happened? It all fits. And you got to believe the stories is true when the pieces start to connect, and when you start looking at things and how they fit in place. And it's just something that you can't ignore. And that's how I play it. I don't like to get into all this spooky stuff. Y'all know me. I don't like to touch on me. All this stuff, this aliens, all this. I don't even like to get into all that unless there is a lot of validity to it. And there's a lot of proof to back it up. And when you start looking at history, when you start looking at what's going on, there is a huge amount, or else I wouldn't really touch on it. I wouldn't really get into it, because I don't like to deal with that spooky stuff that you really can't touch, you know, things of that nature. But this stuff, it's a lot of validity to it. When I was doing this research years ago, when the connection with the Van Allen radiation belts and the whole ionosphere and everything like that, and the negative ions, when I made that connection, it blew me away. I was hooked, because I was like, damn, I mean, it just fit. it just fit, and I was hooked ever since then. And I was digging and I came to the conclusion I'm going to give you, in part 6. But yeah, this is part 4, and we got through it. It's a done deal. We got a lot more to go. I want to thank you guys for watching and purchasing the DVD. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot of information. I went through it pretty quickly, but, thanks for watching, and, see you guys next video. And, as I said, there will be more videos on YouTube to help bridge this gap, and, just other random videos coming from YouTube. And, I've been busy. I've been traveling. As I said, I'm going to probably end this series in Kemet in Egypt, where I'm going, next year, and, probably end it there. And I'm going to be everywhere. It's a lot of places I'm going to go that I'm going to shoot from to try to help to prove my point, if I'm able to do so. So a lot more to come from me. Thank you guys again. I know I always thank you. Some people say you think it's too much. I got to thank you guys. I appreciate the support. Seriously, I appreciate the messages and everything like that. And see you guys next video. Thanks for watching.